What's up, friends? My name is Jess. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing the mid-year book Freakout tag. I hope I got that right. There are a lot of words in this tag title. And we're just going to jump right into it because if I really linger on this, I'm going to start to realize that it's really been half of the year already. Yikes. So the first question of the tag is, what is the best book you've read so far this year? And I picked A Man Called Uwe by Fredrik Backman. This was an instant favorite just based on writing style alone, because it has one of my favorite writing styles, but it's not one that's easy to find because it's not an easy one to describe either. I likened it to The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden and Good Omens. By extension, I think it's also a little bit similar to Pratchett's writing in his Discworld series, but not by much because the Discworld series is very sci-fi fantasy heavy, and this is very much a contemporary story. And it is recounting mundane, ordinary events in life around the larger plot, of course. The best way I can describe it is that this writing style makes the mundane funny and absurd, and it kind of has a humorous and at times lightly snarky tone. There are a bunch of one-liners and quips, and it's just so funny. You need to read it to understand what I'm describing, honestly. Beyond the writing style, I did also really appreciate the story, and I was really touched by it. I mentioned this book in my January to March recent reads video, so if you want my full thoughts on it, feel free to go check out that video. I will have it in the cards, maybe linked down below, but definitely in the cards. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far this year? And the answer is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, although it's kind of an automatic win just because I haven't read a lot of sequels. The only other sequels I've read are from series that either disappointed me or I actively disliked. So of course, the fact that I liked Crooked Kingdom at all was just an automatic win, which sounds bad. I actually really did like this book. And I absolutely adore the characters and the relationships in this book, so I think I gave Crooked Kingdom 5 stars, so I did actually like it. And I do also talk about this in my recent reads video that I mentioned in the previous question. Question number 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but you want to, and my answer is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid is my queen. I loved Daisy Jones. I loved Evelyn Hugo. I am so certain that I'm going to love Malibu Rising too. She's just an insta-buy author for me at this point. The only reason I haven't read Malibu Rising yet is because I want to be in the perfect headspace, you know? I want to make sure that I can fully enjoy and cherish this book. And I believe that I mentioned this in part 1 of my anticipated releases of 2021 videos. It might have been part 2. This comes out in June. The titles of those videos should have the months, so just check whichever one includes June and you can hear maybe more of my thoughts on this book and a summary of it as well if you want. Question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and my answer is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I also mentioned this book in one of my anticipated releases of 2021 video, but this one's in part 2. I knew that one for sure. Stephen Graham Jones is also another automatic author for me at this point. I've loved the other 2 books of his that I've read, which was Mongrels and The Only Good Indians. So I'm down to read anything he puts out. I think I reviewed Mongrels in my January to March recent reads video, so you can check out my review for that book, but all of his books are pretty different from each other in terms of premise, so I don't know how much you'll get out of it. But speaking of premise, the synopsis for My Heart is a Chainsaw is the one that interests me the most from the get-go out of all of the books of his that I've read. It's described as an homage to slasher films, and if that doesn't sound like the coolest thing ever, I can't wait. Question number 5 is biggest disappointment. Solitaire by Alice Oseman, and this is my most recent disappointment too. I think it disappointed me this past weekend. I read Solitaire as a part of the Alice Oseman read-along, which is being hosted by Katie Can't Read and the Petite Punk. Before the read-along started, Radio Silence was the only Alice Oseman book I had ever read, and I adored it. And then we started the read-along by reading Heartstopper, loved it too. So I had high expectations for Solitaire, especially because it was following Tori, which was one of my favorite characters from the Heartstopper graphic novels. It just wasn't for me. The writing style felt super choppy, more telling than showing. The mystery plotline was just weird and out of place and felt disjointed from the romance to me. And not that I liked the romance plotline anymore, to be honest, because I didn't feel like there was any real chemistry between the characters. And then there was a lot of misogyny and general judgmental attitude, and there was some content that would probably be triggering for people. But in all fairness, I read the original version of Solitaire, and I have heard that the revised version takes care of some of those problems. So take my words with a grain of salt. Question number 6 is biggest surprise, and that would be Chronicles of Crestomancy Volume 1 by Diana Wynne Jones. I read this for the Studio Ghibli Readathon. I'm not really sure when I'm gonna put this tag video up, but either the Studio Ghibli Readathon vlog is already out, or it will be one of the next couple videos, so keep an eye out for that. The reason I picked up this book in the first place is because when I was a kid, I accidentally got volume 3 of this series. I remember not really liking it, and I'm assuming a part of it is because I was just starting in the middle of the series and I didn't have the proper foundation to enjoy the story. But even so, when I picked up volume 1, I honestly didn't think I was gonna like it that much just because I remember not liking volume 3. But I was pleasantly surprised. I had a lot of fun reading this story. It was entertaining and interesting while at the same time being relaxing and just a good time without putting a lot of effort into reading it. Fun fact, the author of this book is actually the author of Howl's Moving Castle. And honestly, even if I didn't know that, I think I would have made the connection between this book and Studio Ghibli because it does have very similar vibes to me. This was also a shock because I don't usually like middle grade books. I don't know, I just liked this one. Question number 7 is favorite new author, either a debut author or an author new to you, and for this I chose Frederick Bachman. I've still only read A Man Called Uwe by him, but I loved the writing style so much that I am utterly confident that I'm going to love his other books as well. I am most excited to pick up Anxious People because I've heard nothing but good things about it. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush, and I guess I'm gonna choose Jesper from Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. I don't really do fictional crushes. At most I'll be fond of them, but you know, book boyfriends, book girlfriends, that's not my thing at all. I chose Jesper mostly because I adore his humor and he's such a flirt. He may not be my actual fictional crush because there isn't one ever, but I do understand why he's Wyland's crush, and that's a good enough reason to make him the answer. Question number 9 is newest favorite character, and I chose 2 for this question. First being Severo from the Red Rising trilogy, and the second being Tori, specifically Tori from Heartstopper, not Tori from any other OSEMAN book. Both of them have pretty dry, snarky humor, which is probably the reason why I like them, to be honest. Tori just has perfect timing for popping up and poking fun at her brother, and there is an iconic scene where she interacts with Nick's brother, and if you have read Heartstopper and you've read that scene, you understand why she has to be one of my favorites. She just doesn't take anyone's shit, but she also cares about her brother so much, and I respect that. Severo, on the other hand, crass little shit, but I adore him. His humor and so many of the things that he did throughout the trilogy was just so funny, but he's also super clever and loyal to his friends. He's really a character that stepped up to the plate without ever compromising who he was, and I admire that. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. For this question, I chose Heartstopper, which is probably a weird answer because it is a very wholesome, fluffy graphic novel series. But hear me out. I was originally going to choose it for the next question, which is book that made you the happiest, but I have another answer for that question, so I wanted to have different books for each question. And Heartstopper happens to be the only book so far this year that I remember even making me tear up. Because I'm not really a crier when I read. It's really hard to get me to do that. I love to cry when I read, it just doesn't happen often. But there are 2 scenes throughout the Heartstopper graphic novels that just hit me so hard. One scene is where one of our main characters starts to realize that he might be bisexual, and he's Googling things and he's trying to figure it out, and he just ends up curled up in his bed crying and wondering what this means and just feeling so lost. I remember what it was like to be really confused and lost and just trying to figure out who you are and just not having any answers and feeling really distressed about it. That scene meant a lot to me. The second scene is a bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear anything about it, skip to this timestamp. One of our main characters develops an eating disorder, and he ends up writing a letter to then read it to his parents because he's been struggling with telling them that he needs help. And in the middle of reading this letter to his parents, he breaks down sobbing. I had to put Heartstopper down. I literally had to put it down for a minute to collect myself. This isn't anything that I've ever mentioned on my channel, I don't think, but I myself am recovering from an eating disorder. It was really hard to even say to myself that I had an eating disorder, let alone saying it to my parents or other people because I thought they wouldn't believe me or they would think I was dramatic or something like that. To see that character break down sobbing was essentially to see myself. And that was pretty difficult, so yeah, Heartstopper honestly did kind of make me cry. On to a happier question though, because question 11 is a book that made you happy. And for this, I chose Tweet Cute. This is a YA contemporary romance that I read either in January or February, I'm not sure. Definitely shows up in my recent reads video, so check that out for in-depth thoughts. But basically, I really did not expect to like it as much as I did. The romance was just so cute, and there were just so many wonderful moments of tension that made it impossible for me to stop grinning. I'm literally smiling right now just at the thought of it. I can't think about Sweet Cute and not smile. Question number 12 is, what is the most beautiful book you have bought or received? I honestly haven't bought or received any books that I would think are gasp-worthy beautiful. Of all of them though, I think I like the cover of Dune the most. Since last year, I've been very conscious about only buying physical books if I'm absolutely convinced that I'm going to love the book, or I've already read it before and I loved it, or it costs like a couple dollars, in which case that's a risk I'm willing to take. With Dune, however, I am not extremely convinced I'm going to like this book, but I am already extremely in love with the cover. I just love seeing pure black combined with bright, vibrant colors. I also really love illustrative styles like this, and I really like how the title is integrated into the cover design where it's overlapping with the dunes. I'm also a huge fan of this kind of grainy texture in designs. It's one of my favorites, and I personally love when I get the opportunity to use it whenever I'm designing something. The Astonishing Color of After has a similar kind of textured look to the cover, which made it a close second to this question. And this was a gift from Steph from Stephanie Bookish. Question number 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So first of all, I really want to read the Bloodline series by Rochelle Mead. I was a part of a Vampire Academy read-along that started last year, but unfortunately, because of unforeseen circumstances, we had to cancel the read-along before we got to the Bloodline series, which was very disappointing because the Bloodline series was the one that I hadn't read before. I do still want to read them, and I'm extremely excited to get to it. I'm hoping I'll get to the first book in the next couple months, but really, who knows? I also want to read the next two books in the Red Rising series, Iron Gold and Dark Age. I read the original trilogy earlier this year and I did love it. I mentioned it in my recent reads video. The next two books I think are after a significant time jump, maybe following The Next Generation. I'm not really sure, but I really want to continue with this world because not all of the conflict was resolved at the end of the original trilogy, and there are still so many things that could happen, so many things to figure out, especially with the characters. We got a huge plot twist at the end of the third book, so that's pretty high up on my TBR. That's a lie. It's somewhere on my TBR. If I ever say something's really high up on my TBR, don't trust that. Question number 14, the last question, is favorite book community member. This is a super unfair question because it only asks for one person, and I adore all of the friends that I have made in the book community so far. If I really had to pick one though, Delphi from the Oracle of Delphi is my best friend in the book community, so shout out to you. I love you. All right, and that is the end of the tag. I hope you enjoyed getting my answers. I had a pretty fun time filming this. I honestly was not in a good mood before I started filming, but after filming this tag, I'm pretty cheerful. And if you're interested in seeing more bookish content from me, make sure to subscribe because I do post a video every single week. Feel free to like this video and comment below your answers to literally any of the questions in this tag. I'll see you in the next one.